Building a complete retail management system in Excel VBA. What if you could take Microsoft Excel and turn it into a complete retail management application, so that it's no more just a spreadsheet for recording sales or just a worksheet for calculating stocks, but a real application with products, inventory, suppliers record, purchasing order, customers detail, point of sale for day-to-day transaction, calculate sales transaction, print professional looking receipts, print reports, and put everything together on a professional looking dashboard. Imagine a cashier searching for a product, adding it to a shopping cart, entering the quantity, applying a discount, calculating tax, receiving payment, calculating change, and completing the transaction. Then automatically the sales is recorded, the inventory is reduced, the customer's purchase history is updated, and a professional receipt is generated, all from an application running inside Microsoft Excel, and that's exactly what we are going to build. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Raphael, and on this channel we learn how to transform Microsoft Office application into a professional business solution using technologies such as Excel VBA. In this series, we are going to take Excel VBA and use it to build a complete retail management system. But we are not going to build this application in one giant tutorial. We are going to build it in 4 major parts. In part 1, we are going to design and build the foundation. In part 2, we are going to build products, suppliers, purchasing, and inventory. In part 3, we are going to build the point of sale and sale processing system. And in part 4, we are going to complete the system with reports, dashboard, security, testing, and professional deployment. So this is going to be a serious project. And one more important thing, it's going to be a software development learning experience. Let's get started. Let's look at the foundation. Before we open the VBA editor and start writing hundreds of lines of code, we need to do something very important. We need to design the application. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make when developing Excel application is starting with the user form. They create a form, they add text boxes, they add command buttons, then they start writing code. Eventually, the project becomes difficult to understand and even more difficult to maintain. We are not going to do that in this project. We are going to approach this like a software development project. First, we would need to understand the system. Second, we need to design the data. Thirdly, we need to design the application structure. And then we begin to write the code. What we are building today. Let's start by looking at the complete system. Our retail management system contains several major areas. For example, administration. This will include the business information, users, systems, settings, categories, units, and tax settings. The inventory section will include products, stock quantities, purchases, prices, selling price, minimum stock levels, and stock adjustment. Purchasing. This will include suppliers, purchases, purchase details, goods received, and purchase cost. The customer section will contain customer records, contact informations, purchase history, and outstanding balances where applicable. The point of sale section will include product search, barcode entry, shopping carts, quantities, discount, taxes, payments, change, and sales completion. The sales section will include sales transactions, sales details, payment informations, and transaction history. Reporting, on the other hand, will include daily sales, monthly sales, product sales, inventory valuation, purchase reports, closed stock reports, and profit analysis. Finally, the dashboard will include key performance indicators, charts, sales trends, top selling products, inventory information, and other business analytics. Now we have a clear roadmap or a flow diagram to follow in building our retail management system step by step. Now that we know what our retail application entails, let's start by learning how to create the project. Let's begin by creating a new folder and call it Rafina Retail Management System. After that, create or open a new Excel workbook and save it as Rafina Retail Management System or whatever name you choose. Make sure to save the workbook as Excel Micro-enabled Workbook. This means that we will get the file extension .xlsm. This means that our workbook with the file extension xlsm. This is important because our application will contain VBA code. So remember, .xlsx does not support VBA code, but xlsm does. So make sure the project is correctly saved in the folder that you have already created. Now let's plan our workbook. Now that we finished creating our workbook, let's now think about our worksheet. We don't want to randomly create worksheets whenever we need one. We want it structured instead. For this project, we are going to separate our application into different layers, and we will eventually have worksheets for our data tables, configuration, and reporting. For example, we have settings, users, categories, units, products, suppliers, customers, purchase details, sales, sales details, stock adjustment. Notice something important here. We are treating our worksheets as data storage structure, not as ordinary worksheets. That distinction will become very important as our application grows. Now we get to one of the most important parts of this project, the database. We are using Excel, but we still need to think about data properly. A common beginner mistake is to put everything together into one sheet. For example, we can have product, customer, suppliers, sales, purchases, quantity, prices. Everything is mixed up. That might work for a small spreadsheet, but it becomes a nightmare when you are building an application. Instead, we are going to separate our information into logical tables. For example, we would have our product table, we will have our suppliers table, we have our customers table, we have the sales table, we have sales details table, we also have our purchase table. That will be used to store purchase transactions. We will also create another table called purchase details table. This will store products contained in each purchase. This approach gives every table a clear responsibility, and that's one of the fundamental ideas behind good application design. Let's now go on to understand the sales structure. Suppose a customer comes into the store and buys 3 products. They purchase product A, 2 units, product B, 1 unit, and product C, 5 units. Do we then have to create 3 separate sales transactions? No, we have one sales containing 3 different items. So we need 2 levels of information. The first is the sales header. This will tell us about the transaction itself. For example, invoice number, date, customer, cashier, subtotal, discount, tax, grand total, payment method, amount paid, and change. Then the sales details. This tells us what was actually sold. For example, invoice number, product ID, quantity, unit price, discount, tax, and line total. This separation is extremely important, and later when we build the POS, you will see exactly why. Creating the settings table. Let's begin with one of the simplest tables, our settings table. We will create a worksheet and call it settings, and we are going to turn our data range into an Excel table. We can then give it a name, tblSettings. Now, our defined fields can contain information that controls our application. For example, setting ID, setting name, setting value, description. The idea is that instead of hard coding every configuration value inside our VBA procedure, we can retrieve settings from this table. This gives us flexibility. For example, if we need to change the tax rate, we shouldn't necessarily have to modify our VBA code. We should be able to change the setting. This is a small example of designing our applications so that configuration is separated from business logic. Business information. Now let's think about the business itself. Our application should be able to store information such as business name, address, telephone number, email, website, tax number, and other information that might appear on the receipt and reports. Why? Because our receipt shouldn't contain something like business name here forever. The application should be able to retrieve the business information from our settings. Later, when we build the receipt model, VBA will read this information and place it on the receipt automatically. This is one of the advantages of building an application instead of manually creating documents. Let's look at the product categories. We need categories. For example, a retail store might have beverages, food, electronics, stationery, cosmetics, household items, and so on. So we will create our categories worksheet, and we will have category ID, category name, description, status. This will give us a centralized list of categories. Later, when we build a product user form, we can populate a combo box from this table. That means the user doesn't manually have to type the category every time. We will also need units. For example, piece, box, carton, bottle, pack, kilogram, gram, liter, and so on. This means that we have to create our unit table that will contain unit ID, unit name, description, and status. Again, this is something that might look simple now, but later, when we are building the product models, this table will become useful. Let's think about who will use the application. A retail management system shouldn't necessarily be operated by one person with unrestricted access. We may have administrator, manager, cashier, inventory officer, sales officer, and other users. So we can create our TBL users, which will have information such as user ID, username, full name, password information, role, status, last login, and other appropriate fields. Now, because security is important, we need to be careful about how credentials are handled. We are not going to build an insecure authentication system just for demonstration purpose. As we progress through the project, we will discuss appropriate validation, access control, and application protection. Now, let's move into the VBA structure. Let's now look at this other important lesson. In this project, we are not going to put all our code in one enormous module. Instead, we are going to have several modules. For example, main module, database module, validation module, utilities module, inventory modules, sales modules, purchasing modules, and many more. This is how we are going to organize our module so that each one is responsible for one aspect of our application. We are not going to create all these modules today. We will add them as our project grows. But what I want you to understand is the principle from the beginning. One module should not be responsible for everything. That is why modular code matters. Imagine we eventually have over 5,000 VBA lines of code, and everything is inside one module. Finding and maintaining code will become difficult. But if our code is organized logically, we can immediately identify where something belongs. For example, if we need an inventory operation, we will look inside the inventory module. If we need a validation function, we will look inside validation module. If we need a sales procedure, we will look inside sales module. This is called modular programming. And this is why I keep on emphasizing the importance of learning VBA fundamentals. If you are watching this and thinking, Raphael, this looks complicated. Don't worry, you don't need to understand the entire application today. You need to understand it one layer at a time. And this is where I strongly recommend going through the Raffina Systems Excel VBA Developer Series. That series is designed to take you from understanding the basic building block to writing cleaner and more professional VBA application. You should understand variables, data types, procedures, functions, arguments, objects, properties, methods, events, loops, decision making, scope, error handling, debugging, and modular programming. Because throughout this retail system project, we are going to use all of these concepts. When I write a procedure in this project, I don't want you to think, let me copy this code. I want you to think, why was this procedure created? What information does it receive? What does it return? Which worksheet does it interact with? Which other procedure calls it? That is how you move from being someone who copies VBA code to someone who understands VBA development. Another thing we are going to establish from the beginning is naming. Good naming is extremely important in large applications. Instead of having worksheet names, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, we will use meaningful names. Also, instead of having module 1, module 2, we will use meaningful module names. Instead of having TextBox 1, TextBox 2, we will eventually use names that tells us what each control represents. For example, txt product name, txt quantity, txt price, cmb supplier, cmd save, cmd delete, cmd search. This may seem like extra work, but trust me, when the project becomes large, you'll be grateful that you did it. Now let's establish another important VBA practice, and that is option explicit. At the top of our module, we are going to use option explicit. Why? Because it forces us to declare a variable. For example, if you accidentally type total amount instead of total amount, VBA can help you identify the problem rather than silently treating it as a different variable. This is a small habit that can prevent major problems. And again, this is something we discussed extensively in the Raffina Systems VBA Developer Series. If you want to write professional VBA applications, practice like this matter. Let's look at the application workflow. When the user opens the application initializes. The user logs in, the dashboard appears. Then the user can access the appropriate modules. For example, products, purchasing, inventory, customers, POS, reports, and settings. Now imagine a purchase. Supplier provides goods. User records purchase. Purchase is saved. Inventory is increased. Now imagine a sales. Customer arrives. Cashier opens POS. Product is searched. Product is added to cart. Quantity is entered. Discount and tax are calculated. Payment is received. Sales is completed. Sales transaction is saved. Receipt is generated. Dashboard and report can use the new transaction. This is the system we are building. Let's stop here to review what we've done in this part. We haven't built the POS yet. We haven't written 100 lines of VBA code. And we haven't created the dashboard. But we've done something much more important. We've created the architecture. We've defined what the application is supposed to do. We've identified the major modules. We've designed the database structure. We've established the idea of separate tables. We've established the naming conventions. We've discussed modular VBA programming. And we've established the development roadmap. This foundation is going to make everything that comes next easier. What comes next? In part 2, we are going to start building the operational core of the system. We are going to create the product management. So part 2 is where our foundation starts becoming a real retail management application. And before you leave, if you are serious about learning how to build a professional Excel VBA applications, don't just follow this project. Go back and study the Raffina Systems Excel VBA Developer Series. This retail system is a practical project. The Developer Series provides the programming foundations. The two complement each other. The Developer Series teaches you the language. This project teaches you how to use that language to build a real application. And that's the combination I want you to have. Once you build an application like this, the next question becomes, how do I protect and distribute it? That's a completely different stage of software development. And that's where Raffina AppShield will eventually come in handy. Raffina AppShield can be used to prepare your application for professional distribution, licensing, and protection. But we need our retail application first. So this is where our journey begins. We are taking a blank Excel workbook and we are going to transform it into a complete retail management application. From database design, to inventory, to purchasing, to point of sale, to sales, to receipt, to report, and finally to professional deployment. If you want to follow this project from beginning to the end, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next part. And if you are building along with me, don't just copy the code. Understand the code. Understand why the tables are designed the way they are. Understand why the procedures are separated. Understand how the modules communicate. Because when this series is finished, I don't want you to simply say, I built a retail management system. I want you to be able to say, I understand how to build Excel VBA applications. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in part 2, where we'll begin building the product, suppliers, purchasing and inventory, management modules, and many more. Until then, keep learning and keep developing. Bye for now.